Hola and welcome to Coffee with Avila. I'm Aviana Lemaire, and on this channel we discuss neurodivergence and greater living. So I put out some questions. I'm doing this now at the end of my videos. If there's something in the indie community that I can address as me, as a mystic, as a Christian mystic, as an AuDHDer, and someone brought up specifically the book Reality Transurfing by Vadim Zealand. And hope that my mouth is not going to keep getting confused today, or this is going to be a really weird video for me, so I can keep it from being too weird for you. But now first off, going through the book, I have never been all the way through this book, and so I've started fresh, going back through it again, and I'm not done yet. I am 3 chapters through, and before I get to going through it, it's possible that what's contained in the book could be a series of videos, because it's kind of hard for me to get through it because there's nothing new in the book so far. There's nothing new as a concept. There's nothing I haven't heard of before. There's nothing I haven't learned before. And it's just kind of rehashing the concept of what's the universe made of and how do we interact with it, which is a grand concept. It's one of great interest to me. So, hold on, I need to process the fact that I just heard this car horn in the background. Long story short, I'm 3 chapters into the book, and there is something that is never mentioned in the book, but it completely embodies everything that's being talked about so far. And in the context of a neurodivergent person, an autistic person, an AuDHDer. I don't know how much it affects an ADHDer, because someone who's ADHD and not autistic is allistic, and they will have an allistic way of reacting to things. But for an autist, there is a lot of vagueness in the book as far as how to implement anything that's going forward. I completely see that. But one of the reasons why it is so vague and so weird for us, and it's going to be so difficult for us potentially to understand and to execute in a completely successful way, is because this falls into the category of ignoring the difference between the autistic brain and any other type of brain. And a huge amount of it is all about emotion, feeling. Especially the opening of the book was basically talking about a very potentially real situation for a lot of people, being stuck in a place, hating it, it's not good for you, you have bad feelings. But the concept is, oh, you get overwhelmed by your emotions, and then the only thing that you bring to yourself is more of what you're overwhelmed by or you don't want. Because now basically, I'm not quoting, I'm paraphrasing because it's easier for me. That's what I do. If I understand something, I give it to you based on the understanding, not the quote. But the concept is you get lost in your emotions, and that your emotions are controlling you, and that once your emotions control you and take over, they're like a vortex, and they are now doing the power of, this is a good point, people don't explain it this way. Generally what everyone is saying is that you are here and your emotions are kind of around you, containing you, controlling you. They're like a trap, they're like a cage, and you're kind of housed inside of this cage. It's a swirling vortex of a cage, like a tornado of emotion, and you're trapped inside of it, and the tornado is wreaking havoc everywhere it goes, because it's not pretty. It's a force, it's a powerful force, but it is not peaceful. So you don't fully understand how the outside of it is creating chaos if you've spent your entire life inside of it, in the eye, right? You're in the eye of your own emotions. The assumption in this book is that we are all completely controlled by our emotions. This does not apply to an autistic individual. I would say to a healthy autistic individual, but I have known a great variety. And you have to get to a point where you're dealing with something else that's affecting your mind, your spirit, your thoughts, before it changes you to the point where you're no longer logic forward. Massive point here. Neurotypical individuals, or I should say allistic individuals, are quite famously, I'm saying quite famously, no one phrases it this way, but everyone spends their entire life talking about it. It's in every biography. Psychology is greatly based off of it. A lot of spirituality is based off of it. And this is another thing he's addressing here. Holistic people are quite famously controlled by their emotions first, or they are emotion forward. And it's extremely common for people to be controlled by their emotions. It's inside of their own stories and psychology. Again, you can go find it everywhere. It's always the concept that you have to learn to control your emotion. You have to first become aware of them. And separately, you have to become aware of your thoughts and somehow parcel them out from your emotions, because you're supposed to be unable to tell which one is which. As autists, we are generally very aware of this difference, because one of the things that we run into greatly in life is having a conversation with an holistic individual, particularly neurotypicals. They will present words as part of a conversation, and we will present words as part of a conversation. The difference is that they are emotion forward beings, logic after that. We are, and that's natural, we are naturally logic forward individuals and emotions after that. This is going to have a huge impact on how we are using any kind of manifestation method, how we approach spirituality. Everything in our lives is a different experience because we are built in a different way. In that conversation between the neurotypical individual and the autistic individual, very often they present words, we present words. Sometimes they then it's very common for them to completely write off our words. Just realize you can't see the autistic side of the conversation. We don't need more of that in life. They will often completely write off our words and say maddening things to us, like, well, those are your feelings. And just because they're your feelings doesn't mean it's fact, because that's how they work. We have to survive by learning how they work and how to interact with them and all that, but they don't have to do that for us. So they very often don't know anything outside of how they work. And how they work is very often that they're having feelings, and what they feel is now, because they're emotion forward, it's now informing their thoughts. They base their logic off of that because the emotion comes first. It's the first experience. It paints everything. They are often trapped inside of that gigantic tornado of emotion. Whereas for an autist, we have a tendency to be trapped inside of a giant tornado of logic. Now, it doesn't have the same effect, because when something happens with us, we can definitely have emotional reactions. We know this. Even if they're pathologized, we have our emotional reactions and our personalities, but they're never going to be the forefront. We don't necessarily get trapped in a lifelong tornado of hatred toward where we live or the experiences that we're having, because we don't get trapped in a tornado of emotion unless something is terribly, hideously, horribly wrong in our past and our spirit and our life, and it has trapped us in that place because we're very much not well. I've seen this happen, but so far I've only seen it happen during short time frames where someone is completely overwhelmed, and it's kind of like an extended meltdown reaction where they get pushed over the edge and have something like a meltdown, and then because they have other issues they're dealing with that put emotions, generally trauma, that put the emotions forward, that overwhelm leads to them being locked in their emotions for a while. But as autists, we seem to naturally come out of it. We handle it differently. We think about it differently. I'm having to take a break as I say this because I'm not sure how to translate the massive nature of this glaring omission from everything I tend to encounter in life about emotion forward people versus logic forward people. I don't know how to take it and translate it into smaller thoughts and specific instructions just yet, but I will get there. It might be in another video. I'm going to keep going because I feel impassioned by this right now, and suddenly the words are coming. As autists, we're taking an approach to learning these things, and we're very good at finding these things and learning them and digesting very often some of the grander concepts based on what our interests are, everything. We're built in a certain way. So if we're interested, especially if it becomes a top interest in our life, or what they call a special interest, we have a tendency to know. Spirituality and all of this stuff, the makings of the universe and humanity and the nature of God and all this stuff, this is a lifelong interest for mine. It's been a tip-top interest since the advent of me. So I get the concept, oh no, is it getting dark? Am I losing light? Ooh, I think it's going to come back up. It's been doing it all day. But anyway, natural light I'm recording with for some reason today. I didn't turn on another one. And I can't go turn it on now because there's too much stuff and I don't have a clear pathway. So we're going to deal with this. I think it'll be fine. Long story short, we're going to have to take different approaches as autists to a lot of what's out there in the entire spiritual, metaphysical, whatever they want to call it, community. I've also noticed in this book, he seems to be making a point of specifically saying, oh, this isn't magical, this isn't mystical. It very much is, but some people really like the words and the boxes and the categories. It's all the same thing. My viewpoint on everything is the connection. It's all the same thing, so the different terms don't really matter. It's all describing a set of functions. And the problem is it's greatly focused on everything else and how it functions, but it doesn't tend to make any room for how some of us as human beings function differently. This book, for instance, is greatly explaining how we function as human beings, but it's not coming from a perspective that is aware of the difference in the autistic situation. For a neurotypical person, for example, you might be caught up in that tornado of emotion because you dislike where you're living or the experiences you're having or your social life, and so you get lost in it and you're thinking and you're feeling it and your emotions are big and you're running with your emotions because they're leading you, especially if you haven't reached that point in your spirit where you're able to truly lock that down and do what's best for you, to process it, to see the difference between the emotion and what's maybe just pure logical fact on paper. An autistic person is built to know that pure logical thing on paper. Sometimes what's happening with us, quite frankly, which I could turn into another video later, is that we're less aware of our emotions because we're not so into them and thinking about them and obsessed with them. We don't, feel first because that's not how we're built. So we don't always 100% delve into them like that because it's not really running our life. It's not running our studies. It's not running our understandings of things. Except, again, there can be specific situations, but that's not the whole of the autistic experience. And I, as an AuDHDer, have got the logic and the emotions. Believe you me, if anything's in balance, my emotions are not far behind the game. I'm in balance. They're in there playing. I still am ultimately autistic in being logic forward. It's basically autistic or not when it comes to some things. And while there's great diversity, logic forward thinking is us. So if you're trying to approach something like this, it might be weird for you because they spend a lot of time telling you to rein your emotions in. And frankly, we're naturally built that way. So we might be wasting a lot of time trying to do something that's already done. Now I'm going to use this as a metaphor. I'm a mystic, and there are this is how I'm built, okay? So where I'm looking at a thing, and I'm very much using terms like spirituality, but I'm recognizing the connection, but I'm using the term. I'm just going to go for that spiritual aspect. I spend a good amount of my time studying how shall I put this? How to increase my spiritual awareness and how to be more aware of different layers of reality. And for instance, the possibility of a presence. Let's say there's an angelic presence. Let's say there's a lovely presence or an unlovely one, something uncomfortable. I wanted to become more sensitive to it because I'd spent my entire life in a world of people who were not naturally mystically gifted as I was. So this is how it relates to being autistic and logic forward, spending your life in a world who are not logically gifted in the way that we are. right? So as that inherent mystic with some natural gifts I didn't know I had, I would listen to people. For instance, a really good example is talking about being able to pick up on things and noticing angels or the subtle energies, they call them. That is the perfect one. It used to drive me crazy. I was trying to understand, how do I pick up on subtle energies? Because people are saying there's a whole new level of existence. It's beneath what we notice. You pick up on extremely subtle energies, teeny tiny sensations, the life inside of something, like the life inside of a plant, or the life inside of the smaller creatures that might live in or crawl underneath the plants. And everybody just kept saying part of your spiritual journey is to do this. And part of the way that you know that you are increasing in certain ways in your capacity for sensing these things and opening yourself up spiritually to what you're made to be in that capacity, part of that is becoming more sensitive to these energies. And I could not do this no matter what I did. I couldn't feel a budge or a shift. All I could do is just become more aware of what I already knew and was sensing and experiencing, because then I was focusing on it. Let's close my eyes. Let's focus on the energy of the flame or whatever, people teaching you how to feel the energy in your body, put your hands together in different exercises so you can feel that. What I was doing as a mystic, trying to find the subtle energies, or whatever the term is, I've forgotten already. ADHD brain really doing the most today. I forgot the term. Subtle, is that it? Was it subtle energies? Let me try to move on. I'm now obsessed with trying to remember the proper term. I couldn't feel them because it turns out I was already there. I was already feeling them. I was trying to do what they said. Here's where you are. Let's feel something that's more subtle than this. But the truth is, I was gifted and blessed to be able to feel the subtle things anyway. So I wasn't here. I was feeling the subtle things. I was already there, sort of underneath that basin of regular consciousness, being able to sense what was beneath it. So I was kind of running myself ragged, trying to get sensitive to something, because I didn't realize for a great time to come that I'm already sensitive to it. So what I was trying to do was kind of the impossible. I'm trying to discover something I didn't realize I had already known. So as an autist who is already logic forward and emotion second, they're constantly telling us that we're run by our emotions. We're in the tornado of emotion, and the tornado's picked us up, and we don't feel it because we're in the, this is my metaphor, no one else is saying this specifically, but we don't feel it because we're in the center, in the peaceful eye of the storm. Trying not to hiccup, excuse me. But outside of us and around us is the chaos of the tornado of our emotions, creating everything, whether we like it or not. So we have to do all this work to sort of recognize where we are, to recognize the strength of the emotion, to understand how big it is and how much power it has and how to direct it. At this point, we're in the driver's seat. It's like we're in a huge transformer, but we're somehow the transformer brain. I don't know, maybe it's a neglected, defunct Autobot, and we're just in there walking around. But we've got to now control the tornado like it's that big empty Autobot casing, right? We're in there, teeny little us, trying to control the tornado of our emotion. That can be a huge task. But what they're not telling us, because I can't find anyone who's willing to recognize it except me and the other autists to whom I speak, is that we are not in a tornado of our emotion. Our emotions are secondary to our logic. Some of us are running ourselves insane, trying to get to a place where we can put our emotions back on the back burner. Relative to our own experience of our emotions, we're trying to put them back on the back burner because we don't realize they're already back there. And this is something that used to bother me. I cannot tell you how much it used to bother me. Seeking something, not knowing I was already there. It's like being too close to the forest. They say too close, so close to the forest that you can't see the trees, which is absurd to me because as a term, because my autistic brain is like, if I'm in the forest, all I can see is trees. I can see other things, but there are trees everywhere. But I think it was explained to me what they mean is if you're not in the forest and you're far enough back, you look forward and you're just like, oh wow, that's a lot of trees. I just see 100 of them. I see 1,000. And if you're smack dab in the middle of the forest, maybe you can't see 1,000 from there. I still think it's a bad metaphor. I gotta come up with something better than that. I still have a problem with it. I'm trying to accept it, and my brain is actively rejecting it because I'm logic forward. And I'm like, no, if you're in the forest, unless you're hidden inside of a tent, you can see those trees. Now you can see them better than you can see anything else. There's that unique energy that I was talking about, that AuDHD energy. I've got like a lot of things going on inside of my mind and my emotions today. But I think that one of the reasons why it's a little bit weird as an autist trying to deal with the way people are telling us to deal with our emotions is that we haven't recognized ourselves yet. And because we are us, and because we work the way we do, and we are logical, we are uniquely qualified as autists to look back over our lives, to go read our old diaries, blog posts, rewatch our vlogs, pay attention from inside of us, and see whether or not we've truly been out of control of our emotions. Because there are a lot of people who truthfully are out of control of their emotions, and it tends to have a horrendous set of impacts on life. Whereas for autists, we might be told it's having a horrendous set of impacts on life, but very often it's either coming from somebody who, I've had this experience too, being told that I'm out of control of my emotions by someone who wasn't well, and they were very much not in control of theirs. But they didn't have a problem with their own emotions. They wanted me to just deal with the I've known a lot of people like this, but I'm thinking of one in particular, wanted me to just deal with the tornado of their emotion and everything that they did. But literally, if I'm just sitting here being what people want to call stoic, autistic me, and they say something and my reaction is some type of facial expression, any type, I'm silently having a facial expression, and I've been told that my expressions are not big, so it's like, you know, I crease my eyebrows or I have a bit of consternation or whatever, all of a sudden that's categorized as an emotional outburst, right? So some of us as autists are dealing with that. People they're not healthy. And so something you're particularly unhealthy about, where you're not even slightly healed, is probably not where you should be giving advice of that nature, because in the context I just described, it's actually more harmful than good. Another reason why people are often telling us that we're out of control of our emotions is because part of the pathology, as an autist or an ADHDer even, but especially me as an AuDHDer, when I'm triggered to the point where I can't handle anything anymore, when I'm distressed, I'm hot or I'm cold, I'm uncomfortable, I'm not well, I'm worried about things, there are other things on my mind, when I'm dysregulated, when there's unexpected stuff happening all day, when I can't get cozy, when I'm extremely uncozy, and it gets to the point where it's reaching my limit, and then suddenly I'm just way over my limit, I might have a meltdown. A lot of times people are telling us we don't have any control over our emotions because if they have seen us having a meltdown, or very often getting to that point where sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, it's obvious something is wrong, I need to get out of here. Maybe you want to go do it privately. Maybe you have that luxury. But they will see the lead up to it, or God forbid, they see the meltdown itself, and then they're telling us, okay, well, that's it then. That's horrifying. You are completely out of control of your emotions. But that's a very different thing. We're having a meltdown because everything in our logic forward, in our logic forward experience, has now just failed to get us back comfortable. So now we've defaulted past logic. No logic worked. We're upset now. Now it's time for the emotions to take center stage, because they have welled up to the point where they've finally gotten past our capacity to handle them, just like they can with any human being who has the capacity to act out or speak out, or the physical capacity or the cerebral capacity, any human being. But when it's happening with us, there we go, out of control of emotions. That's not how it works. We're logic forward. So long story short, and I hope I've used enough potential explanations to get this point out of the way right now. If I haven't, please please do ask me in the comments. I hope this is cohesive, but if anything is unclear, please ask about it in the comments. If you had any suggestions about it, please leave that in the comments. There needs to be some kind of conversation about this. The world has got us out here studying the rest of the world's information, but we're absorbing it and experiencing it differently. So just like me, not knowing I was spiritually gifted, trying to sense the subtle energies or trying to sense the presence of God, I kind of, honestly, with the presence of God thing, I kind of always knew that. I just didn't realize how 100% of the time it was until I got to a point where I had reason to think about it and analyze it and pay attention. But with the subtle energies thing, I didn't know I was feeling that because it hadn't, excuse me, hiccups, because it hadn't become a conversation. So there I am trying to accomplish something that's been naturally accomplished in me. And I think that's what a lot of the difficulty is with all of the things out there. Manifestation, spirituality, those energies themselves, the control of our own mind, addressing our own emotions. They've got us out there trying to break through a wall or a tornado of emotion, and we're not in one. We're already out. So if we're trying to get out of a tornado of our own emotion, but we're not in one, we're just going to keep on trying, possibly for the rest of eternity, in confusion and probably great frustration because you're desperately trying to do something that's actually impossible. It doesn't exist. So now that I've seen that I've talked about this for close to half an hour, well, I didn't. Something will be cut, but it's not more stuff I had to say. At some point, my brain just was like, how in the world do I explain this? So I'm just sitting here in front of the camera silently for a minute. Nothing was being said. I was just inside of a vortex of logic, inside of a tornado of logic, trying to understand how to make my point so that someone could understand. But I guess I've talked about it 25 minutes and it seems like it's getting darker again. So maybe I can go into greater detail if it comes to me, but so far as I know, that's all I've got to say on the subject right now. And this goes for this book, Reality Transurfing. But once again, it could apply to just about anything in life that addresses the subject of humanity or life or existence or the universe or experience or anything. So if you have anything to say, leave it in the comments. I'm asking at the end of every video for at least a while. Okay, I'm saying at the end of every video, at least for a while, I'm autistic, I'm ADHD, I'm a Christian mystic. If you want a viewpoint on something, I see the connection in all things instead of the division, right? If you want to hear any of those viewpoints, any conglomerate of them, any of the individual ones, a different viewpoint, a unique viewpoint on anything that has to do with that stuff, just life, and you're not finding it out there being discussed in the ND community, or you're finding it but you just want that different viewpoint, if there's something that you are not finding out there and you're like, why won't anyone address this? Leave it in the comments. And if I can add anything to the subject or conversation, I will do so, perhaps in a video, if that's something that I can do. So leave any suggestions in the comments. And if you did like it, like the video, share the video, especially if you think anyone will get any use or help from it. Subscribe, ring the notification bell so you know when I upload. And I think that's just about it. I hope so. I'm done now. That's about it. Bye now.